Welcome to CSE 255 Operating System Deployment Best Practices. Today is Wednesday, 8th February. I want you to notice there are some notes and diagrams in here, but more importantly, I am revising the study guide. And essentially, I've restated some new information so it's easier to understand. And I've also revised the study guide addendum. And you'll see this draft. Once I get it a little further along, it'll be 0.8, 0.9. When I get to the point where we're done with the draft, it'll be the study guide. And then if there are changes after that, revision and so on. But I wanted you to take a look at each of these as they come out. And in this case, for the second student learning objective, I ask you to see this study guide addendum, right? So when you go into here and you click, basically when it comes down to installation, the types of installations, there are many different ways to think of that process and many different ways to organize or go about it. And I mean, in some cases, you can classify operating system installation types based on the context, whether it's a physical machine or a virtual machine. I've stated some of this before, or whether or not you're setting up, a smart connected appliance and so on. The important thing to understand is that you have three basic levels of operating system installations that you need to review and grasp, because this is pretty much a cheat sheet. What you're seeing here, the addendum, the first part of the addendum is a cheat sheet of sorts. So if what you're dealing with is a client operating system, not firmware, but a client operating system, there are 4 different ways to install the operating system with clients, okay? And then further down, there are server methods, and then there is one last method that we call enterprise or corporate method. So if you're working in a large organization, the last method would be a special case. When you're in a mid-sized to larger organization, it could be a nonprofit like Lutheran Social Services of the Virgin Island, which is a behind-the-scenes organization. It's a nonprofit, but it's the 5th largest employer in the Virgin Islands. So it's a large organization. And there are like 10 sites on 2 islands or 3 islands. So you would call that an enterprise, even though, they're still working with mostly client technology and they only have a few servers, right? So a lot of it depends on context. What we're going to do is walk through this so that you understand each of the different methods. And then I want you to pay particular attention to some of the criteria. Like if you have local delivery optimization of Windows updates, okay, we'll talk about what that means. So how you use this cheat sheet is basically, if you're given a certain scenario and it says, oh, you need to work the clone of a virtual machine, right? Well, if you look at each of these 4 methods, there's only one that talks about virtual machine clones at the end, right? And that's called whole system replication. So that's how you would select the best method for a given operating system install, right? Or let's say I said, you're in a situation and all you have to work with is a single USB drive. Well, that would be the first method, right? So you're gonna create a recovery disk, and we're actually gonna demonstrate that live in class. You're gonna receive an email, and then that's your 2.1 assignment, okay? Any questions about the material in this addendum and how it's laid out? So we'll walk through each one of these and explain more about them. The server methods, right? And then the enterprise method. So what you're going to do for your module assessment or in life in general, you'll have a certain scenario or context. And what you're going to do is refer to this listing, and then basically you can simply ignore the other methods unless that given criteria for that scenario is in the mix. So in that sense, let's say you're working on a single system, a client OS, and you have to use commands without a GUI. Then Windows Admin Center would not be an option, but PowerShell is suitable, okay? Now, when I say it requires work on a single system, I'm saying you might be doing an installation prep. So you're using a graphical tool. And Windows Admin Center is something we'll spend some quality time on. That's what WAC means, okay? WDS is an acronym that stands for Windows Deployment Server or Windows Deployment Services, depending on the context. And there's a really cool tool where you can create your own system image. We'll talk about that in a minute, but in any case, there are basic all the way to advanced methods. And what I wanted to do now was to ask you, are there any questions about the addendum and what we've just shown you? Okay. Can somebody unmute your mic and then?
Yeah. No questions about the addendum.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you were still with us. So I am going to send this email. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go here into my client email, and I have each of your email addresses here. So I've got this email ready. And actually, I'm going to do one more thing first. I'm going to slide a copy into drafts because I'm going to reuse this again. I'll pop this message out, and then I'll get your email addresses. And what I want you to do is to tell me if you're getting this email. I think this is the one that was open before. Yep. All right. In our module 2, the first assignment is to set up and install USB, and you're going to use your own Windows media to do it. So if you are faced with a situation where you want to wipe out your system to the bare metal and reload Windows, but you don't have media. Maybe you bought the laptop at Office Max and it didn't include any Windows disks with it. That's often the case. So when systems are sold, they don't include the Windows disks anymore. So Microsoft created a utility where you can take a spare USB drive. And what's important to understand is that you want to make sure that it is a certain size and type, and we're going to talk about that right now. I'm going to try to stop my share, but then turn on my camera, okay? And I need you to tell me if you see this. Oh, there we go. Everybody there?
Oh, there we go. Yep, we see it now.
Okay. And I'm gonna double click on this. And all right, so this is a basic SanDisk thumb drive. It's about 5-6 years old, but what's important is that it's blue on the end. And if you look at the fine print, it'll tell you that it is a 3.0. I don't know if it'll actually focus. Oh, this is terrible.
Yeah,
It says it's a 3.0 thumb drive. You need a 16 gig. You might be able to do with an 8 gig thumb drive, but the last time I tried this, you had to have a 16 gig. So it needs to be a 3.0 thumb drive or later, not a 3.0 compatible. So if you go to any store and you pick up a USB drive, it'll say on the packaging, USB 3.0 compatible. And that is not the same as 3.0. It means that you have an older 2.0 bargain disk. It works 10 times slower. This will be painful as hell. It's really inexpensive, but it's black, okay? And it's compatible with USB 3.0 ports. That means an old drive will work on a newer USB port when you plug it in. That's all that the word compatible means, okay? Any questions?
no.
Okay, so essentially, I'm going to demonstrate how this works right here, right now, right in front of you. And I'm going to go back to my email and use the same email I just sent you, right? And basically, if you hold your pointer over here, what you should see is a link, right? And there's one other thing I want to tell you about this. Most of you some of you may be getting a little nervous right now because you're thinking, okay, he wants me to wipe my laptop and reload Windows. No, I just want you to demonstrate that you know how to set up to do that. And the proof of that is that it's actually running. So you're going to use the USB to start the install process. And then you're going to take your smartphone and you're going to boot your system into the Windows install media from the USB, not your regular laptop. And it's going to ask you about starting a Windows setup. And you're going to take a picture of that with your smartphone, and then you're going to cancel out. You're not going to go through with it, okay? But that proves to me that you did what you said you were going to do, okay? You had a USB 3.0 disk. It was 8 gigs or larger, better if it's 16 gigs or larger. It's something that's a spare, right? And what you did was you clicked on this email and it sent you to the website where the Microsoft Media Creation tool started to load. Now, this is for Windows 11. If you have Windows 10, there may be a different media creation tool for Windows 11. So that's one thing that you might want to send me an email if you're still working with Windows. If you're still working with Windows 10, that's fine. You can still do the same thing. And you can try this media creation tool and it might work just fine with Windows 10. But if you run into a snag, say, hey, I don't have Windows 11, I'm still working with Windows 10. And again, there's just a different media creation tool for older versions of Windows, okay? So now I have the media creation tool. And I'm going to go to my downloads. And there it says Media Creation Tool for 22H2. Now that's the latest version of Windows. If you are not currently on the Windows version known as 22H2, you're going to want to update until you are. So how do you check that? You go to Windows, go to Settings, go to System, right? And then scroll to the bottom where it says About, and it should say 22H2. And if you have Windows 10 22H2, again, the media creation tool will probably work just fine, even with Windows 10. If it doesn't, there's another media creation tool. I'll send you a different link. Now, why would you install media using this method? A really important point is that your machine has a unique combination of network addresses. It has a unique combination of hardware, so that there's a specific combination of devices and hardware, motherboard, brand, model, and so on. There's also a digital network footprint. In a manner of speaking, it's unique. And Microsoft, if you already have a valid license, it's going to embed your license activation into the media that's created. Now, this is really important because you can get copies of Windows, bootleg copies on the internet, or you can get low-cost copies that are so low cost, you better be careful because that's probably embedded with malware, right? So nothing comes from nothing. If somebody's selling you a $20 copy of Windows on the internet, it's not likely legitimate, and you're probably loading a whole lot of trouble. Right? But the good news is, even if your current system is limping along, and it's just terrible, it's slow, it's not the same PC it used to be, you can use this feature and it's going to identify, okay, here's the specific edition and version of Windows. So the client version is 11, the edition is the home edition, and this is the specific kernel that's installed, right? That's the build of the operating system. And the product key and activation will be embedded into that USB as it's being created. Now, the only thing that's going to be on that USB, the only thing at all, is the operating system. So it'll wipe your USB out, but it'll create a bootable USB. And the bootable USB can be inserted into your USB port, a 3.0 USB port. Please look at your laptop or PC. You'll think something is wrong because it's taking so slow, it's forever, and we don't have any patience. But what you're going to do to complete the assignment by the end of the week, you're going to take a spare thumb drive, you're going to build this install media, and then you're going to test it. And if you insert your USB 3.0 or higher thumb drive into a USB 3.0 or higher port, and then as your system is powered on, the logo for your brand is showing on the screen. You can get into the startup mode, right? Into the BIOS, and you can change boot options so it boots from the USB. Does everybody know what I'm talking about here? There are YouTube videos everywhere on how to do this. What you do is and everybody's BIOS is a little different because of the brand, but there's a key you can usually press to select the boot device when it's powered on. Once again, you're going to use that USB, not to wipe your system. But what you will do is start the setup process to ensure that your USB is functional and it's working, right? And then as soon as the setup screens start, take a picture of it and then bail out, close the windows. It'll say, hey, are you sure you want to quit? You say, yes. Oh, but you're going to interrupt the setup. And you're like, I know, do it anyway. And if there's a screen, you go to the X in the upper right corner and you exit out, exit out, exit out, and eventually you'll see a black window. At that point, you can power your system off, remove your thumb drive, and then use your thumb drive for anything else you care to. But I usually make one and I set it aside just in case I have to reload Windows. I don't want to have to go through that crap. And if I don't have a working system, it's a lot harder. I mean, put another way, what happens if your system blows up? And what happens is if you have to use recovery or repair modes and you don't have any Windows media because, well, they never gave you a disk or then you never got a thumb drive, right? You can also create repair media or recovery media in the security options. So there's another way to do this, but that's really more intended for like data rescue scenarios. In any case, the thing is, you want to experience this for yourself. And then we've already been through in our previous class how there are so many extra things that happen when you just upgrade in place, right? I'm going to demonstrate wiping the slate clean on Friday. I'm going to use my thumb drive to wipe a Lenovo laptop, my old laptop, to the bare metal, and I use setup to do it. So there's a place in Windows setup where you can delete the disks and then you bail out and you power it off. And that wipes all the data on the disk. It's bare metal after that. And all you do is power your system off, put your make sure your USB is still in the thumb drive, start it from the USB and then load Windows. And you have a clean slate, meaning whatever was around before is a problem. So I'm going to do something a little crazy. I'm going to zip back to a previous set of detail that we were reviewing before, okay? And so we were talking about refuting the 3 common excuses. So I wrote out some quick statements. And I want to see if these quick statements really capture the spirit of each of the 3 cases, right? So excuse number 1, it's easier, quicker, and there are built-in features so you can upgrade in place. You saw this, right? So I want to explain.
Yeah.
The fact that a user wizard provides prompts for an option is no guarantee that your preference will actually work out. Just because the setup wizard has prompts to, oh, I want to save my data in my apps, right? You may think choosing to keep your apps and your data means once the upgrade happens, everything will be there and everything will work. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people every single day who do this. I'm talking a daily experience because there are hundreds of millions of Windows systems worldwide. And at any given moment, somebody is trying to rebuild or recover, right? So you think you are, and they'll tell you after the fact, it's like, no, I mean, my old software doesn't work with the new operating system. Is that a clear explanation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Excuse number 2. You get to keep all your applications and data intact. Well, we were just talking about that, right? Now, this is false, sort of. Same thing again. Let's explain further. So you wanted to install the same or a new version of the operating system since your system was a bit off. It was slower than usual, maybe infected with something, okay? But then you select that in-place upgrade option to keep your stuff and your old applications, even though there are likely newer, better versions out there. Let's state that again. Even though there are likely newer and better versions out there now. Okay, it's happening every day. New versions of Office come out every day. New versions of your favorite programs, Adobe Reader, all that, right? All your cool games. New versions of the games coming out all the time. And the bugs aren't there. Now, here's the question. How does any operating system know the difference between the infected programs and corrupted data and the good stuff you want to keep? Is there like some little genie in there that says, oh, okay, they want to keep the data and the applications, but yeah, what about this application? Oh, that was Oh, they loaded that application the other night when they were into that strange website and there was weirdness going on, lots of naked people. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they want to keep that one. I mean, because they loaded it, they wanted it, right? Wouldn't you rather decide what stays and what goes on your system? That's the whole point, right? When you do a bare metal wipe, that's the whole point. So I wanted to take another whack at excuse number 2 to see if I could kind of really put some meat on the bones there, so to speak. I hope that works for you. Excuse number 3, it will overwrite any bad stuff on the system. And this is false, sort of. Let's explain. Okay, but you just told it not to overwrite the good stuff, the bad stuff, just stuff. You said, yeah, I want to keep my data in my applications. So when you choose an in-place upgrade, because, you know, loading a new operating system will overwrite any bad stuff on the system. If you select the option to keep your applications and data, is it really overwriting the bad stuff on the system? No, it's not. And we proved that. See, that's the dynamic there. That's why it's not a best practice. That's why if you're a professional, you should say, no, there's a better way. It takes just as long. It's going to take long no matter what you do. It's going to take a bit. But we can do this, I don't know, in an hour or so, in a morning or an afternoon at most. If you have the tools and resources, morning or afternoon at most. Clean slate, all your data safe, all your applications fresh and new versions, no nasty stuff, right? That's the difference. Any questions about how we revisited that?
No questions.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is kick off how this media works, and then it's going to sit there and run in the background for a while. I'm going to select this first, and then do I just double click it to run it?
You want to run as an administrator?
You want to run it as administrator? Yes. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to run it as an administrator. So first, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my thumb drive just to make sure there's nothing on here that I want to keep. My thumb drive is empty, right? And I gave it a name called do not use. That's for another class. Okay, so that's empty. And it's about 32 gigabytes, but when it's formatted, it's a little less than 30 gigs, right? Everybody understands why that is, right? For the most part?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select it. Then I'm going to use my right mouse button and select Run as Administrator. And I'm going to say yes. And it says getting a few things ready. And what it's doing is talking to the mothership. Oh, and it says Windows 10 setup. So it'll probably work even with Windows 10 as long as you have a 22H2 installation. It's asking if you accept the license terms. You're going to scroll down and accept. Because if you don't scroll down, it doesn't simulate that you read it all, and somehow those tricky people on the other end know that you didn't really read it. So how could you agree to it? I know it's superstitious. It says upgrade this PC now. You know what that is? That's called an in-place upgrade. No! No! We just went through that, didn't we? No! No, you don't want to do that. You want to create installation media for another PC. Now, that's kind of counterintuitive. Why would you say that? You're going to start the Windows install process, wipe the disk clean to bare metal. At that point, your install media will think, oh, this is a new machine. It's only until the OS is installed and connected to the internet and it wakes up and talks to the mothership that the mothership will go, oh, my baby is back again. It'll recognize your unique profile. the network ID, the network address, the combination of digital components and so on, okay? I'm gonna hit next. I'm gonna say, yeah, I don't want Windows 10, I want Windows 11, right? And I'm gonna double check because this should be reading Windows 11. So in fact, yeah, after this loads, I'm gonna boot it with this and see if Windows 10 comes up or Windows 11. And if that's the case, it means I need to find the new link for Windows 11. And I'll post two links, one for Windows 10 and one for Windows 11. I'll just click next though. It's the same process, works the same way. I'm using a USB flash drive. It says it needs to be at least 8 gigs. Some 8 gig models don't format to 8 gigs large, so then it fails. That's why I'm saying 16 is better. You could create an ISO file and burn it to a DVD, but we're not going to do that. It's a handy option. I'm selecting drive letter F. I do not want to select one of my other hard disks. That would be bad. Then I click next. It's going to go out on the internet. It's going to download a sterile installation media directory from Microsoft headquarters. So I'm getting a clean, fresh copy of Windows. Does everybody see what's going on here? Yep. Clean and fresh. Okay. That's going to run in the background. I'm going to test it. I'll take a picture of what you're supposed to capture and post that as a sample in the assignment, okay? And again, if this ends up loading Windows 10 instead of Windows 11, I'll ferret out the Windows 11 tool. I actually did this on my brand new laptop running Windows 11, and I used the same process and I thought the same media. So anyway, there you have it. Now let's cover one more quick topic before we clear today. And this won't take very long. If you move back to this again, student learning objective D, explain the difference between install media, distros, and whole system images. Now, this is one of the coolest things about OS installs I've ever seen. And what we're going to do is give you a taste of this, and then we're going to beat it up on Friday. We're actually going to run this software to create a whole system image. And when we do it, you're going to get a chance to see how big companies can roll out Windows 500 at a time. So you can download the install media from the internet, okay? And you can use the media creation tool to create and install media for use. So when you hear the term install media, that includes only the data required to load the basic operating system. It's just Windows, it's just the Mac, OS X, it's just Linux, nothing else. Okay. Now, in the wonderful world of Linux, they have flavors of Linux, and that's my term for it, but a lot of other people use that term, that are called distros, which is short for distribution. And these include entire collections of the latest version, pre-installed applications, and a different flavor of user GUI. You can get GNOME, and that's spelled GNOME. That's an older style graphical interface for users. And then they have newer ones. One's called KDE Plasma. It's wicked. And so on, right? So there are graphical user environments, and it's it's usually based on a given theme, right? So there's a group of people that get together and they go, yeah, this isn't cool enough. And they come up with a really cool theme. That's called a distro. Now, you can also set up an operating system, all the software desired for a given brand and model of hardware, like a Dell Office machine or the Dell Optiplex in the UVI computer lab. So you start from scratch. You wipe it bare metal. You get all the applications on there that you like. You get the entire machine set up. And then you make a clone of the system. So what you're going to do is you're going to log in, run the updates, install all the stuff, set up your printers, do everything that you wanted to do that you would want. Let's take the computer lab example at UVI. We want every student that sits down at any computer lab to be able to print to the printer in the room. We want them all to be able to sign in. We want them all to be able to use these applications. So you go to the trouble of not just setting up the software, but then actually logging in and using it, right? And then once the system is, before it's infected, did I mention you do this before some goofball gets on the screen and they infect stuff on it? You clone the system, and that can be transplanted to another identical model and brand of the same system hardware. That whole system image can be used like a giant photocopy machine on steroids. If you have a room full of the same Dell Optiplex systems, you can take one system, capture it, stamp it on all the other machines in that room, and it can all happen in an hour or less, in 60 minutes or less. And there's a Windows utility that every version of Windows comes with. It's called sysprep.exe. It's always been there, always ready for use. If you have an image and you want to create a clone of the image for duplication, when you run sysprep, it's going to ask you, where do you want to put it? Now, this is a dumb question, but if you had a smaller hard drive on your laptop and you ran sysprep and you didn't, and your hard drive was nearly full when you did that, and then you ran sysprep, but you didn't connect an external hard drive, when sysprep ran, what do you think it would do to the extra space left? It might ruin your day. So what you'd want is a case where you have a machine like mine, where you're only using about 300 gigs of your C drive, and you have other disks that are a terabyte large and they're mostly empty. And what you can do is create the whole system image and store it on another drive. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? And understand here, this is the most important point. Always select the option to capture this image using something called UBI. UBI is an acronym that stands for out of box experience. That means that when you run sysprep, you're telling it to reset everything so that it's like a brand new machine that you open up and power on for the first time. And it brings you through all the wizards and it asks you all the questions and it says, who's going to use this machine, right? And you basically want to do UBI because if you don't, and then you load it on 50 other machines, you have 50 active clones on the same network with the same address, the same network address when they become active, and that creates a bad day. Important safety tip, boys and girls. Don't forget the UBI when you're using sysprep. We're going to demonstrate this on Friday. It's actually very cool, and once you have that image, you can use Windows Deployment Server, WDS, to push it out to hundreds and hundreds of machines in under an hour. And they all wake up like a Star Wars nightmare, and here are all the like stormtroopers. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? All right. So I'm gonna let this complete. And then I'll let you know what happens after. I'll see if this is actually the Windows 10 or Windows 11. I'm pretty sure it'll work though, either way. It's just that they forgot to update this junk, so it makes it look like it's not the right one. Please lay hands on a USB and I can actually assist next class if you're interested. Any questions before we close?